Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 217, DPL Success Story and Interview with Janice Ross. Janice is one of our clients, and this is our very first DPL success story, so I'm super excited to talk to her today. And what we're going to talk about is a book that has just come out that she worked on during some of her time with us. And it's called The Choreography of Environments: How the Anna and Lawrence Halprin Home Transformed Contemporary Dance and Urban Design. So welcome, Janice.
Thank you, Christine. I'm thrilled to be here after the birth of the book, thanks to you as the midwife.
Ah, thank you very much. And today, what we're going to do in this episode, since it's the first time we've ever tried it, I'm going to ask Janice a couple questions about her book and her writing process. Since most people come to our podcast for scholarly productivity and writing tips, we're going to dig into how this book got completed. So, the first question I want to ask is: you've got this new book out. Tell us what it's about. What is the significant, contribution that it makes? What are some things you're really excited about? Tell us about your book.
Okay, I'm delighted to. It's kind of a quirky premise that I began with, and it's really about um, the unseen archive in our homes. I argue that the spaces in which we live our daily lives really shape the way we view and actually move through the world. And I use a mid-century modern home of a very famous art couple, Anna Halprin, who's a dancer, Lawrence Halprin, who is a landscape architect, and take apart their house to say how it shaped them as artists.
Mhm. What was the most exciting part about writing this book, or what was, great fun to write? What did you really enjoy? What about that?
Um, Thank you for that question because it was one of the most pleasurable writing processes I've had. I'm a retired professor, so I don't have people breathing down my neck about use a lot of theory and I had fun by going on a treasure hunt in this house. I walked through it after the dancer had died at the age of 101 before her kids sold the house. And I just felt this presence in the spaces in which she and her husband had lived for 70 years. So I went on a mental treasure hunt. What was it like to sit in those chairs? What was it like to wake up in the morning and look out those windows? And tried to write back into their lives how the home had shaped them.
One of the things that's really great about this project, and since I was lucky enough to see it firsthand as it got developed, I know there are so many gorgeous photographs and just beautiful descriptions of this kind of interactive outside inside divide and environment. Could you tell us a little bit about how the book itself is structured? Because you mentioned a walkthrough, and I know that's one of the coolest pieces I think about the book is how you approach walking us through these different areas. So maybe cover the big, kind of the big four areas that you worked with.
And I'm delighted to, and I'll say that my process working with you was really critical for that because I call myself a recovering academic now because I don't I don't think of 500-page books, I think of 200, and you really helped me get it down to five tight chapters, and let's have a chapter on one object at a time.
Mhm.
So it was manageable in that way. And you were my test audience because you're not a specialist in my field. You're
Nope.
just a very smart, well-informed academic,
Thank you.
and you're welcome. And so if it landed well with you, great. I could push deeper, and you were honest about, this isn't really working. And then I really knew that I needed to push for more clarity or drop that path and take a new one. So I think the pleasure was in having this ideal reader at different stages as I tested out for me a really radical way of approaching scholarship.
Yeah, I know it's just such a great book, and I know One of the areas that you talk about a lot in this book is the stairs and the steps. And I thought out of all the pieces, I know that was my favorite because I think about when we write, when we do academic writing is stairs. So the
Mm.
metaphors are really beautiful. The pictures are great. Um, yeah. So, okay. So there are a couple other things that I think maybe audience members want to know. Obviously, all writers struggle. Writing a book is hard. You've done this work before. You're retired from Stanford. You've done this kind of academic work for a long time. So this is obviously it was a fun book to write, but all writers have struggles. So what were some areas that maybe you struggled with that maybe our coaching helped out a little bit, or some things you figured out on your own? Do you want to share with that?
Yes. Well, first of all, having the coaching, and I've never written a book before with a coach in this way. I I tried paths I wouldn't normally. I initially pitched it to two or three architectural presses
Hmm.
because the book crosses over between urban design, architecture, dance, performance, really mid 20th century culture and politics. And I got turned down one after the other, and it was crushing because I thought, oh, I'm bringing something novel, but I was an interloper because I'm in the field of theater and performance studies. But you kept just telling me to regroup, try again. And we would do these very frequent check ins as I was getting doors slammed in my face until finally I went with the press I should have started with, which was Oxford University Press. And you were there every step of the way, Christine. Like when the editor said, great, send me a chapter, you said, yay. And, it would be each iteration of the back and forth and through to the contract. And then I think delivering on a very tight deadline, which I'm always on time, but I would have never set less than a year to write a 220-page book. But I
Hmm.
did it. You would say, okay, you got 2 days, get me a redraft of chapter one. Um, so I think the writing pace was fantastic because it made it a different kind of book.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah,
that. I'm glad it was
yeah.
helpful. And you pointed out something that I think is really important with this particular episode is that I think a lot of people have a view of writing coaching that it's remedial or you go there if you need help. And at the current moment in Defend, Publish, and Lead, about a third of our clients are actually, full professors working on books. So there's lots of people that are very experienced in this crowd. And I know, even at this stage when you have the skills, I have the skills how to do these books. I mean, I've also been rejected, and I know I'm definitely going to do a juicy podcast episode on my own journey with one of my books that's coming out as well. But I think one of the lessons here for people that are listening today is that a lot of times if you want to try something that's a little bit more novel, you do have to push a little bit harder in where you're going to go and repackage it for what these different presses wanted. I know both you and I had to scrutinize, like, all right, let's really look at their requirements. Let's look at their list. Let's see these other books. How did they put them together? I know that was really helpful for me to do with you because as somebody that is doing a book with a lot of images and figures, I know that work is scholarly labor that we just don't hear, like how that happened. So I know this wasn't one of our original questions, but if you, and we definitely have time for it, if you wanted to say something about what did you do about all those images? How did you keep track of that? And I know images were a big thing, and I know our readers or our listeners would love to hear about that if you could say something.
Sure. And that was one of the generous things about Oxford. They allowed me 100 photos, 75 color. And so I went searching for them. And I think because of my process with you, I was comfortable hiring out for some support. So, because I couldn't go to Philadelphia where a major archive for the urban designer were, I hired a grad student at UPenn who was fabulous and was in the archive pulling photos, bugging the archivist there who'd never answered the phone, but in person he'd help her find a missing photo. So I did that really intensely to gather images. And then the follow-up, I had someone helping me get permissions. 100 photos is 100 photographers. Each one, you've got to chase down. You need this quality digital image now because the presses do not make any adjustments or accommodations. You've got to deliver your images digitally ready to go right into print.
To get dropped
And
into the book. Yeah.
and that's a whole big process in itself. So I absolutely had an assistant on kind of each coast helping with that.
Oh, that's
Um,
fabulous. Yeah, and
yeah,
I
and
appreciate you sharing that because you had so much to keep track of. Did you use a document to track all of your figures, like just to know which ones do I have, which ones do I have permissions? Like, how did you actually track that stuff?
you should know before you ask me. I'm terrible with documents. Everything's a Word doc for me. But my assistant in the East Coast, she did make an Excel spreadsheet where she would list the status of the photo, the fees, where we were in trying to get rights, etc. But no, I'm not good at charts, but the Excel spreadsheets that she created were really useful for her.
Fabulous. I am going to share a screenshot because I know we don't have a ton of people that watch on YouTube. We're definitely more of an audio only sort of affair. But if you're a YouTube watcher, you can actually see the cover of Janice's book, The Choreography of Environments. I have the website up from Oxford. We will link it in the show notes. So I encourage you to check it out. And then this is my very final question because I just got a fabulous idea for a podcast episode about book covers. Tell us about the cover. How did that picture
Yeah,
get on the cover?
well, it's interesting. It came about in a way by accident. Initially, the photo I wanted, the daughter of the photographer wanted an astronomical amount of money. She wanted $1,000 for the use. And Oxford told me they had never ever heard of anyone asking for that kind of fee.
Hmm?
So instead, I went with an image that I had permission from UPenn Archives, and I love it because the photographer taking a picture of the dancer is the same guy whose daughter wouldn't give me permission to use a photo of his. So
Oh, I love that.
he's on the cover by default, but he's not the photographer, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, but I wanted something that would speak to the content of the book. And that, to me, this says dance, architecture. You see the brown hills of California in the background. They were California artists. And Oxford very generously went with it almost untouched.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, and I'm purposely not describing this for audio only listeners because I want you to go check out this gorgeous book. It's amazing. So I will put a link in the show notes for everybody. And also, just as a kind of as we close out this episode, I will just say for anybody that's looking for our coaching services and you're just hearing about us, you can contact us by looking at Defend, Publish, and Lead and clicking the schedule a free consultation button, or you can always email me at christinedefendpublishandlead.com. So we're happy to have Janice with us, and thanks for being our episode guest today, Janice.
Well, thank you. It was a delight. And again, I can't sing your praises high enough. You
Oh,
you
thank
were
you very much.
indispensable for the book coming to be.
Oh, thank you very much. Happy writing, everybody.